Hello, this is Armen Kojoyian. You all are in my studio here in Jackson Heights, Queens, New York City. My career as an artist, designer, and illustrator for approximately 40, 50 years. Say, to go back to my early years as a kid, 5, 6 years old, that I would be preoccupied good parts of my day drawing on the floor with crayons, paper, newsprint paper. You know, at a young age, I had the vehicle to live in a fantasy world, which I'm sure a lot of young kids do, but this was just artwork was just a greater access to that fantasy world. And this piece, you have to see, this is one of my earliest paintings. I must have been 9 years old. I forget. Come up here and take a look at that. That was from my first art lesson, third or fourth attempt at painting. Yeah, and I love seascapes because, growing up in New England, we were always around the ocean. And then when I got to high school, junior high, your interests start to evolve. And in high school, I got involved in sports, and Dad was a coach in my high school. So when I went to college, I didn't go as a fine art major. I had no intention to be a fine artist. I went to college to play sports, football primarily, and I thought that I would stay in college and be a grad assistant and coach, but my path took me a different way. I applied for graduate school to get my MFA, and my portfolio work was good enough, and we had some great influential teachers. After graduation, that was a weird time in the country. Unemployment levels were very high. Art schools then didn't prepare you for the job world, and it was really a hard slog to pursue my way to some kind of substantial career. I knew I wanted to be in the art world, but I didn't know where the breaks would come. Started in doing mechanicals for pre-press work in a little shop somewhere in Boston that lasted 2 weeks. They said I didn't work fast enough at that time. Of course, I didn't know what I was doing. But then it was a few more months. I'm looking around, and I end up getting a job at a place in Harvard Square called Stats for You. And I was in the dark room, and I picked up a lot of language and camera techniques, and we were making something that's obsolete now. It was called a photostat. And I was a master on a machine that you use with the crank handles. It was called an Agfa Gevart, like a flatbed machine that you would put your images on to convert to screens for printing press. Or we would do 3D shots on this machine. And that, I did that for about 4 or 5 months, then got bored, started applying to graphic design jobs because I had a different kind of portfolio, and I picked up the language of graphic design. So I probably went on a couple dozen interviews with no luck at all. Got a response back from a publisher in Boston called Allen and Bacon. They trained me very well. It was if not better than a college education to the graphic design business and book building and in the craft of book design and the craft of book production. This was a tissue design of a book cover. I'm glad I kept this because this is how work was done before there was a computer. So this is how I designed a book cover, and then I have little notes for the illustrator. And the illustrator's a fantastic guy. His name's Roy Weeman. You can find his work on the internet. Really incredible.
So this is how they did it back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day. And this is his work. So what I've envisioned, and I literally got this idea right after the meeting of the launch of the book. And, under that pressure that we had, you had to get your design ideas quick. So I had the idea of splitting the globe, so when you close the book, you actually got the feel of a whole globe. So when you carried it like this, this was the feel. I loved that. It just came to me in
And
the
this was the original design of...
That's the original to get approved by the editors, because when you hired an illustrator at this level, his work was like, I think that was 1800 for that illustration, 1990s. So that opened up many doors that really sustained me for close to 40 some years, and eventually brought me to New York City to work as a designer for many publishers. And as an offshoot of that, I saw how great illustrators come into the publishing houses, and I said, well, I can do that myself. So I had a lot of success at that as well. Okay, this actually was one of the pieces from my very first show in Espresso 77, Gallery 77. It's just a oil wash, and then I worked in on it with oil pastels, oil bars. This was the second or third piece my mom did in art lessons, the same art lessons I was taking with the same lady. And this somebody, an artist in Massachusetts, did that on my mother. Very nice picture. That looked just like a nice picture. Always after work I would try to paint, but work would be so much and so stressful, such a great volume of work that, you know, I could paint for 3-4 months with good strength, but after that, you know, working around the clock, not sleeping, because I usually would paint from 9 to 2 in the morning, I found that I would stop painting. So I was just focusing on my design work. So it was a constant battle, paying your bills and pursuing your art. And that kind of brings me up to where I am now, where I just want to see if I can dedicate all my time to making art. You know, I tend to vacillate more to the abstraction or organic abstraction or figurative abstraction work. There seems to be more level of question and investigation. It's immediate in abstract work, where I didn't get that in representational work, where, you know, you almost are becoming a slave to your technique, and it gets boring. And, you know, you start looking at the clock, particularly with illustration for clients. You're up against a deadline. You have to have a style that's quick. Abstract work, sense of total freedom. You know, you literally falling into a different world. There you go. That's pretty good. And then I just have this little wire antenna. The reality of being an artist in New York City is not the success stories that the media likes to portray, where, you know, somebody comes to the city and like a Basquiat or a Keith Haring. Those are very rare, very unique stories. For every person that's like them, there's probably 1,000 to 2,000 people that are struggling, and that's true of all the arts here in the city. You know, dance, acting, writing, music. Space is vital in New York to become a successful artist, actually physical painting artist, because once you start producing a lot of work, unless that work is selling and you have a way to store it, that work is going to push you out of your apartment. I'm starting to get pushed out of my apartment. So there's other artists a little more productive than me that I've been in their studios, and they've worked so much, have so much work, that they literally, this is all the space they have. They're sitting around here. I know one particular artist in Long Island City that had to give up his studio because he had so much work, so many stacks of paintings, that he was forced out, and it's crimped his ability to produce. So I have bigger pieces. They're all hidden in the wooden shipping crate. That's a crate I shipped artwork to Art Basel in Miami. pieces there. All those tubes have big pieces of artwork that I did in Brooklyn, rolled up on archival paper. But once these paintings come out and occupy 50% of the room, I'll be back to working on paper, and I will need to find a bigger studio. I told you my work vacillates from the abstract to the representational, so you can kind of see how that affects recent pieces I'm doing. But I'm just moving more and more to the abstraction. Organic. I call it organic abstraction because all my abstraction has recognizable forms, shapes, but I'm not really defining them to be such. You know, this obviously is it's humanoid. It's a head, but it's an abstraction. I call this pineal boy. That's the enlightened pineal gland. These pieces, I can do these quick, but the energy that's contained in these, my hand motion, my arm, I love to work big. I love to have big motion moving, all constant movement. But there's nothing that says my movement should stop here. I can fill this wall with a painting every week if I had the space or the means to do it. But I don't. Where am I going to put them? I don't have the space, so I've got to get the space. That's goal number one, is to get the space, because and actually you see more things when you're working bigger. But I'm also trying to be a conduit for the energy and imagery that's coming to me, because it is a form of energy that's coming out. It comes out through the artist. No artworks are made without a pure form of energy coming through the artist. I really feel like we're a conduit anyway to another world. The artist is just the vehicle. If you can take yourself out of the process, the more you can get yourself out of the process, the better it is. It becomes a purer piece. So I try to, it's a constant discipline to let things happen and don't think.
What is your thought process as you're doing this? What do you usually think?
Focusing on, creating energy off the colors, how they exist next to each other. But I'm also I'm not trying to create consciously anything, but I'm trying to just unleash the organic shapes. So they start to grow and grow. They're almost morphing into another world. And I'm a big believer that that's a world that it could exist in the quantum field. It could be sent to the artist. It's something that's you don't readily hear about. I'm not pursuing an ism or style or name matter. I'm just trying to release as much possible force and energy which comes through the color and shape, but with no intent to create something recognizable. But it takes over, and to the point where you're not even thinking. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say more. You shouldn't have to think, you just have to do. So if each individual artist approaches their work kind of in the same way, each work's going to be unique because of the way the artist innately thinks and releases ideas into the physical world. Because we are a conduit between this world and the one between our ears that's getting messages daily, in particularly when in the art making process. May somebody, if somebody were to hear that, they say, oh, well, this guy's crazy. What's he talking about?